In the corner, Sarah, a fiery redhead with a daring spirit, gestured passionately about the need for fairness in their community. Why should we sit idle while they take what rightfully belongs to us? We are not mere shadows in this world. We are the architects of our own futures. Her eyes sparkled with determination, and Cleo felt the heat of the crowd's excitement, each heartbeat resonating with a collective dream. As Cleo stepped forward, the energy shifted, drawing the collective attention. She cleared her throat, but her voice faltered for a moment. The weight of the moment pressed down on her chest. Malik Orpheus, standing at her side with his broad shoulders relaxed, caught her eye. His steady presence enveloped her like a warm cloak. His own jaw clenched, giving away his protective instinct, yet his eyes simmered with something deeper, a soft admiration. "Thank you, Sarah," Cleo began, her voice rising with newfound resolve. "Each one of you has your own battles to fight, but together we can turn the tide." Her fingers trembled slightly as she swept away stray strands of hair from her face, yet the resolve in her heart pulsed with life. Near the back, Lena, a newcomer to their cause, with fierce determination bursting through her shy demeanor, held a handwritten sign aloft, "Women Rising." Her grip looked unsteady, yet her gaze pinned Cleo like a lifeline. The air thickened with emotion as Cleo continued, "We've had enough of being silenced. It's time to forge a new path." The rallying cry sparked bobbing heads and hands raised high. Applause erupted, echoing through the blooming garden, a symphony of support that made Cleo's pulse quicken. Malik leaned in closer, his breath warm against her ear. "You're on fire, Cleo." She shot him a quick smile, the corners of her mouth trembling with a thin layer of laughter threaded through a shattering anxiety. "If only I could feel it," she whispered back, shifting uneasily beneath the attention. But no sooner had she replied than a commotion broke. A figure stumbled into the circle, panting and wild-eyed. It was Raymond, a local merchant known for his shady dealings, flanked by two of his imposing thugs. The crowd gasped collectively. "Who do you think you are?" Raymond sneered, marred by disdain wrapped around his bravado. "You think your delicate voices can rise above the tide we've set?" "Delicate?" Cleo echoed, her brow furrowing with confusion and outrage alike. "We're not delicate. We're fierce." Raymond's laughter held a chilling edge, echoing in the space between them. "Fierce is not enough, I assure you. You'll find this garden filled with more than just flowers and fairy tales." He aimed a sweeping gesture toward the crowd, his thugs stepping forward, looming like shadows ready to snuff out the light. Cleo felt a surge of panic crawl up her spine as Malik stepped between her and the men with calm assertiveness, his presence a formidable barrier. "You need to leave," he commanded, his voice low and potent like thunder on the horizon. "Or else what, Malik?" Raymond spat, eyeing him with a mix of contempt and fear, his bravado cracking. "You think you can scare us?" The escalating tension hung thick in the air, but Cleo's heart beat loudest in her ears. It was a battle of wills, and she knew she wouldn't back down. "We won't be pawns in your game," she declared, stepping beside Malik, her voice rising like a phoenix from ash. The collective voices behind her surged, a chorus of women emboldened and unyielding. "We are here, and we will be heard," they chanted, an anthem of courage swelling into the fading light as each woman leaned into the strength that coursed through their community. And just like that, the landscape shifted. Cleo caught Malik's glance, intense, unwavering, and fiercely protective, and realized in that moment they were bound by a singular purpose. She wasn't just fighting for her own freedom. She was igniting a movement. "Together we rise," she breathed, her heart ignited with passion. And as the winds swept through the garden, it felt as though an awakening had unfurled beneath the radiant sky. Scene 96, The Path to Redemption. The sky loomed gray over the cobbled streets of London, a tapestry of swirling clouds that reflected the turmoil in Cleo Seke's heart. She stood at the apothecary, her fingers tenderly tracing the delicate glass vials lined up like soldiers awaiting orders. Each one held promises of renewal, healing, and yet unrecognized despair. A heavy scent of dried lavender wafted through the air, mingling with the sharp tang of crushed herbs, bringing her to a standstill as emotions threatened to swell within her. "Do you have what I asked for?" Cleo inquired, her voice steady yet edged with an undercurrent of tension, like the calm just before a storm. The shopkeeper, an elderly woman with spectacles perched low on her nose, nodded knowingly. "Of course, dear. No problem at all. One needs courage to face what lies ahead," she replied, handing over a small, wrapped bundle with a twinkle in her eye, sensing the burdens Cleo carried. Cleo's thoughts spiraled back to Malik Orpheus, whose presence had wrenched her from apathy into a tangle of emotions. She often caught herself wondering how one man could evoke both fondness and frustration in equal measure. Today, however, as she prepared to take her steps toward healing, it was his ghost that chased her around the corners of her mind, lingering as she thought of their last encounter. "I'll never understand you, Malik," she muttered under her breath. Air thickening, she glanced out the window to see a dark figure leaning against the stone wall outside. It was him. Malik's deep-set eyes sparkled with mischief as he held her gaze like a lighthouse drawing in a ship lost at sea. "Do you wish to discuss about my secrets again, dear sister?" he called, a playful lilt in his voice that tamed the seriousness of the moment. "They aren't secrets. At least, not the ones worth sharing," Cleo shot back, a half-smile teasing her lips. She stepped outside, the cool breeze a sharp contrast to the warmth burgeoning within her at the sight of him. His long coat fluttered behind him, an intriguing silhouette against the gloomy backdrop. Cleo moved closer, biting back laughter that threatened to escape, as Malik leaned against the wall in an exaggerated manner, like a dashing rogue from a long-abandoned fairy tale. "You look drenched from the clouds. Couldn't find more suitable weather?" "It's called atmosphere, darling," he replied, bowing slightly in mockery of a courtly gesture. "And besides, it matches the tempest within you. That's quite the observation, isn't it?" She stepped forward, the space between them shrinking, heavy with unspoken words. "What do you want, Malik?" "Just to see how you fare, my tempest," he said, his tone softened by earnestness. "Life has dished out quite the calamity, hasn't it? Engagement ring or no, nothing deprives us of our choices. Those choices come with consequences," Cleo countered, her voice lowering, her defiance wavering. "You never had to live through the shadows of their lives." "Nor should anyone." Malik's reply was almost a whisper as he moved closer still. The gentle musk of his cologne enveloped her, pulling her deeper into the moment, the air charged with tension, current rippling between them like a live wire. Without warning, the world around them faded into insignificance. The distant clatter of horse-drawn carriages softened, and raindrops began to fall in a rhythmic patter against the cobblestones, a soft requiem for their tangled pasts. "You deserve better, Cleo," he murmured, his voice thick with sincerity. "I don't even know what that is anymore," she breathed, her heart pounding in her chest like a wild drum, the weight of her turmoil crashing against all she believed in. She didn't back away. Instead, she challenged the storm, allowing the current to sweep them closer. "What if I told you this storm was meant to cleanse?" Malik asked, leaning in further, their breath mingling like the rain around them. The tumult of thoughts swirled within her, but there was an undeniable pull, a magnetic force that blurred the lines between restraint and desire. In one decisive moment, Cleo closed the gap, their lips meeting in a collision of warmth and longing that ignited every nerve and quenched a thirst she didn't know she had. The kiss tasted of promise and redemption, vibrant as the colors hidden beneath the winter gray. Time paused, allowing the weight of unspoken fears and desires to dissipate. Breathless, they drew away, their foreheads resting against one another like two ships held by an invisible anchor, the world around them both stormy and serene. "I think you've just officially wrecked my man fast," she laughed softly, her voice interlaced with buoyancy. "Then prepare for the aftermath," Malik replied, that familiar fire dancing in his eyes, hinting at chaos before the calm. In that moment, amidst the soft drizzle and the unwavering storm overhead, Cleo Seke recognized the first step on her path to redemption, a union of will, fury, laughter, and most importantly, love that dared to defy the darkness. Scene 97, Challenging Traditions. The rain drummed against the heavy glass windows of Marcus's study, a relentless battering that mirrored the tempest within Cleo's heart. The scent of wet earth seeped through the air, earthy and rich. Cleo stared at her reflection in the shimmering surface, her dark curls tumbling like storm clouds around her determined face. She clenched her fists, feeling the weight of unyielding expectations suffocating her spirit, a suffocation she was no longer willing to endure. "Cleo?" Malik's voice broke through, deep and soothing as he entered the room, an umbrella draped across his shoulder, droplets splattering onto the polished floorboards. His presence felt electric, and for a moment she was entranced by the way the storm made his features stark and dramatic, reflecting the turmoil swirling in her mind. "They believe I should submit," she said, her voice resolute, although a tremor of doubt lurked beneath, "as if my place is merely ornamental. I am not a trinket to be passed around." Malik stepped closer, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly as he studied her. "And yet, submission is painted as grace in our society, a virtue even." He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "But you are anything but ornamental." Cleo turned from the window, meeting his gaze. The intensity in his eyes ignited something within her, a flicker of rebellion. "I want to leave a legacy, Malik, my own, not a shadow cast by familial ties or a hollow marriage." "Then carve it out." He stepped forward, closing the distance between them. The air thickened with tension, the thunder echoing ominously outside. "Defy them. Show them that you are a force to be reckoned with." Suddenly, the door burst open, and Angela, one of Cleo's closest friends, rushed in, her cheeks flushed and hair sticking to her forehead. "Cleo, have you heard? They're pushing the engagement announcement up. It's tomorrow." She waved a parchment frantically in the air. "You mustn't let them dictate your future." "Do they think I will just oblige?" Cleo replied, her voice rising. "They think you have little choice, dear," Angela said, panting as she regained her composure. "They see you as a prize, not a person." Malik shifted beside Cleo. "And isn't that precisely why you must act? You have the power to change the narrative." The storm outside intensified, the wind howling like a restless spirit. Cleo inhaled deeply, each breath filling her with a steely resolve. "I will not go into that gilded cage quietly. They do not understand the fire they are dealing with." Her words hung in the charged air, a declaration of war. "Cleo," Angela exclaimed, eyes sparkling with a mixture of concern and admiration. "This is madness!" "Madness!" Cleo echoed, the thrill of rebellion coursing through her. "Or is it clarion courage finally giving voice to what I believe instead of burying it in silence?" Malik's gaze never wavered, his expression fierce yet tender. "Let me help you," he said, stepping closer again, his presence a solid anchor against the chaos. "Together, we can do this. Together, we can reshape your story." At that moment, thunder clapped anew, rattling the windows, and Cleo felt the urgency of the storm echoing her racing thoughts. She appreciated the warmth of Malik's proximity, the air thick with something unspoken. Their connection was electric, charged with possibilities they both dared to explore. Cleo reached for Malik's hand, her pulse racing as her fingers brushed against his. "Will you stand with me? Will you help me forge this legacy? I can't be alone in this." "Always," he replied, his voice low and rich, sending shivers down her spine. "You may be tempted to rise on your own, but I will break through the chaos to be your shield, whatever the storm may bring." The intensity of his words washed over her like the rain that poured relentlessly outside. For the first time in ages, Cleo felt an exhilarating rush, a promise of what could be. In that moment, she resolved to challenge every expectation. This was no longer just her fight. It was a mission to reclaim her identity and carve out an indelible legacy of joy, passion, and defiance. Their hands entwined with fierce determination, Cleo finally took a step towards the door, ready to face whatever awaited outside. The air crackled with anticipation as the storm thundered on, a foretelling of the tumultuous journey ahead. "Let them come," Cleo whispered, her heart racing with exhilaration. "I am ready." Scene 98, Burning the Past. As Cleo Seke stepped into the dimly lit attic of her childhood home, a musty scent mingled with the faintest whiff of lavender fabric softener, remnants of her mother's touch lingering like a ghost. Dust motes floated lazily in the slanted beams of sunlight, illuminating boxes adorned with forgotten memories. Each container bore witness to the laughter, the tears, and the unrelenting grip of a past she was desperate to leave behind. With silent determination, Cleo approached the first box, her fingers trembling slightly as she peeled open the lid. Inside lay a collection of old journals, their spines cracked and pages yellowed, filled with youthful hopes and dreams. Faded photographs poked out like forgotten whispers, tiny versions of herself with an equally small Malik, both oblivious to the impending storm of their lives. Those were the days. Malik's voice broke through the silence, rich and resonant as he appeared at the edge of the room, arms crossed, leaning against the doorframe. The soft light caught the hard angles of his face, which softened only when he met her gaze. "What kind of trouble are you thinking about stirring up now?" Cleo shot back, the playful jab disguising the heaviness in her heart. Malik stepped closer, the wood creaking underfoot, and a teasing grin danced on his lips. "I'd like to think of it as a renaissance of chaos, a final act of rebellion against this attic of memories." "More like a masochistic venture," she replied, rolling her eyes but unable to quench the warmth flooding her cheeks at his proximity. "What do you suggest? We set everything on fire? Only the bad parts, yeah?" He tilted his head, a glimmer of mischief in his dark eyes. As they rummaged through the relics of their past, throwing aside what no longer served them, silence settled around them like a cozy blanket, punctuated only by the stifled laughter at particularly cringeworthy adolescent notes. The air vibrated with unspoken words, thickening with an unmistakable tension that neither dared acknowledge. "Remember that time we tried to build a tree house?" Malik's voice was softer now, reflective. "And fell 10 feet out of it?" Cleo laughed, the memory surfacing like balm on her rattled spirit. "That was your idea, by the way." "Only because you dared me," he shot back, a gentle teasing in his tone. "You're lucky I didn't break my neck," she replied with mock indignation. Then, their eyes locked nearly painfully tight, the laughter faded, replaced by an understated intensity. "Sometimes I think you deserve to fall," he murmured, stepping closer still, each word heavy with intention. Cleo's breath hitched, feeling every fiber of her being wrap around the moment, the world outside forgotten. "And sometimes I think you might be the one holding me back," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe I'm just waiting for you to let me in," he said, and both their masks slipped under the weight of the truth. A heartbeat passed, thick and discordant. Cleo's pulse thundered in her ears, raging against the tumult of emotions threatening to spill. She stepped back, breaking the spell, and awkwardness flooded the space between them as she tucked a stray hair behind her ear. "But before I let you in," she started, a breath catching in her throat, "I need to. Destroy the past?" Malik finished for her, his voice laced with understanding. "Yes." Cleo drew strength from the intensity of his gaze, reaching for a rumpled photograph herself with her mother, both grinning, oblivious. This is a part of me I can't take with me. It's time to burn it." With a flicker of trepidation, she moved to the fireplace, igniting a fire, flickering lazily but eagerly as if it too learned of the growing tension. Cleo watched the flames dance, their warmth inviting yet fierce. "Should I assist, or just watch the spectacular display?" Malik asked, a teasing lilt to his voice. "Just watch," she replied, fighting a smile, the distraction easing the weight of the moment. With that, she cast the photograph into the flame, the sharp scent of burning paper igniting something within her, a cathartic release of what had once held her captive. The fire crackled loudly, a chorus of triumph, as memories faded into ash. "Goodbye, childhood," Cleo whispered, exhaling at the last shred of her past. Malik's steady silence enveloped her like a protective shield, but the space between them crackled with the potential of what was forming in the heat of the moment, a tension that promised more than mere friendship. As the flames flickered low, they stood wrapped in unspoken understanding, both yearning for something bold to ignite anew. "Cleo," he said, finally breaking the silence, the air trembling with anticipation. "Malik, just kiss me," he urged, his voice low and earnest. And before the last echo of hesitation could materialize, she leaned in, their lips meeting softly at first, as tentative as flames teasing their first breath. The kiss deepened, revealing layers of longing in uncharted territories, both wanting yet afraid. Each heartbeat was a drum echoing into silence, the world beyond reduced to whispers. As the fire crackled out sparks that twirled to join the stars, they stood enraptured in the warmth of each other, the act of burning not just memories, but the seeds of something perhaps more precious still. Scene 99, Forging Ahead. The morning sun streamed through the tall, arched windows of the grand library, illuminating dust motes that danced lazily in the air. Velvet drapes framed the windows, their deep burgundy hue catching the light just so, while the scent of old leather and parchment hung in the air like a comforting embrace. Cleo Seke stood by a towering shelf, her fingers brushing the spines of the leather-bound tomes with a mixture of reverence and agitation. Just days ago, this room had felt like a sanctuary, a place where she could escape the chaos of her life. Now it was the carcass of a dream, cracked open by memories of promises shattered. Cleo, Malik Orpheus entered, his usually buoyant demeanor dampened by the looming shadows of their recent confrontation. He wore a tailored navy coat over a crisp white shirt, the fabric hugging his broad shoulders, but there was an undeniable tenseness in his stride that overshadowed his striking appearance. "We need to talk." Her heart raced at the sight of him, but tempered by a flood of resentment. "Talk? About what, Malik? Your brother's refusal to let us breathe? Or perhaps we should discuss how you stepped in as my knight, only to become a jester at the court of indecision." Malik leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms. "I didn't step in to play the fool. You know that. I'm trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Cleo scoffed, her voice rising in pitch. "Is it protection to keep me tethered to a narrative penned by you and your family? I won't be the pawn in someone else's game. I deserve better than that." The tension thickened, filling the space between them, a silent standoff where the stakes felt both monumental and painfully personal. Malik's deep-set eyes, usually a warm chocolate brown, darkened with frustration. "You think I want this? This chaos? You're more than a pawn in the game. I care about you." "Oh, do you?" Cleo stepped forward, her anger shooting through her like wildfire. "You care for me enough to deliver me into the arms of a family whose secrets are bathed in blood? You'd have me believe that love is a battlefield, Malik, and I refuse to fight for scraps." Malik's facade faltered for a moment, revealing a crack, a glimpse of the man behind the weaponry of charm and bravado. "Do you think I chose this life? It's a smokescreen. I thought I could be different, but it's dragging you into the darkness with me. Can't you see that?" His voice softened, barely above a whisper. For a heartbeat, silence enveloped them, punctuated only by the soft ticking of a clock in the background. Cleo stared at him, the walls she had erected wavering as she saw the vulnerability in his eyes, piercing the layers of steel that made him so alluring yet so infuriating. The tide of her anger began to recede, revealing the anxious depths of her heart exposed to the light. "Malik," she said, quieter now, "I'm struggling to maneuver through this world you've pulled me into. I want to fight for something real, but I can't do it alone, not if the prize is a life stained with deceit." His gaze held hers, unblinking and sincere, the air vibrating between them like the stretched string of a bow, ready to snap. "Cleo, I'm trying to fight, not just for me but for you together. I see you, the woman who refuses to be broken. I admire that fire in you." The moment felt electric, the air charged as he closed the distance between them, his breath mingling with hers. Cleo's heart thudded in her chest like a rallying drum, echoing the desperation to breach the chasm of misunderstanding that lay between them. "What if I'm too burnt from past battles to trust again?" she whispered, vulnerability spilling forth like an open wound. "You're not alone in that," Malik murmured, unyielding in his intensity. "You have me, and I won't let the past tear us apart. Not again." He reached for her hand, their fingers brushing tentatively, igniting a warmth spread through her skin, igniting the sporadic embers of hope deep within. Cleo inhaled, a tremor of courage surging through her. "Then let's chart a new course. No more secrets, no dark shadows." Malik stared into her eyes, and the tension between them eased just enough for possibility to blossom anew. "Together?" She nodded, a smile breaking through the tension, transforming her frustration into an alliance bound by understanding. "Together." As he gently pulled her into an embrace, Cleo felt the weight of their past lift fragile, yet igniting a spark of something profoundly real. Scene 100, a new world unlocked. The warm light filtered through the tall windows of the grand hall, giving the room an ethereal glow as Cleo leaned against the polished mahogany table, tracing her finger along the ornate patterns carved into the wood. "What do you think, Malik? Can we really do this?" Her voice was a mix of excitement and palpable anxiety. cutting through the soft hum of conversation echoing behind them. Malik Orpheus, his brow furrowed in thought, stepped closer, enveloping the space between them with his presence. There was a graceful ease to him, but the shadow in his eyes spoke volumes of the weight he carried. "Change always feels impossible before it happens," he replied, his tone steady, yet laced with an almost conspiratorial urgency. "But I believe we can reshape this world, Cleo. We have to." Cleo turned to meet his gaze, her breath catching as an unexpected vulnerability flickered across his face. The sight was rare, like watching the sun break through a storm. "But what if," she started, her voice barely a whisper, "what if the past decides it wants to hold on to us?" The corners of Malik's lips twitched, just slightly. "Past?" He chuckled dryly, casting a sidelong glance at the gathering of the elite, their silhouettes dancing behind the frosted glass. "It's more of a shadow, Cleo. It never truly leaves us, but it doesn't have to dictate our future." His words hung in the air, poignant and filled with an unspoken connection between them. Cleo felt the longing rise within her, like a surge of energy coursing through her veins. He was leaning in closer, as if the world around them had faded into a murmur, leaving only the two of them at the heart of an electrifying silence. Their eyes locked, and for a moment the noise of the party evaporated, replaced by the thundering pulse in her ears. "You make it sound so simple," she breathed, her defenses momentarily down. "You always have this knack for turning everything into a challenge." Malik's expression shifted, a glimmer of playfulness sparking in his eyes as he took a step back, hands lifted in mock surrender. "Challenge? Oh no, my dear. I prefer to think of it as an opportunity, a chance to prove the naysayers wrong." He gestured grandly, casting his arm towards the mingling guests. Just then, Henrietta, Cleo's boisterous friend, swaggered over, a glass of sparkling wine held aloft like a trophy. "What are you two plotting? You look like you're about to overthrow the monarchy," she exclaimed, laughter rippling through her words. Cleo shot Malik a conspiratorial look, instantly aware of the chemistry crackling between them as Henrietta, oblivious to the tension, continued, "You should tell them about your idea for the new charity gala. I can already see the headlines. Little Miss Cleo and the Dark Prince change the game." Malik raised an eyebrow, impressed despite himself. "Dark Prince?" he echoed, a teasing smile breaking through his more stoic facade. "I must adopt that title immediately." Cleo chuckled, enjoying the light banter as tension released its hold on her. "I suppose it suits you," she said, her heart fluttering slightly. "But it's not just about fun and games, you know." Henrietta waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, come on. The world is dreary enough. We must sprinkle a bit of delight, right?" Malik shifted back to the moment, looking between the two women, his expression softening. "Delight is just as essential as determination. Let's not disregard the importance of laughter amidst the chaos." The sincerity in his voice gave Cleo pause. "Exactly," Cleo chimed in, feeling a surge of warmth at his words. "If we can lift spirits while tackling corruption, it's a win-win." "Just so long as you don't bring in feathered hats or dancing llamas," Malik quipped, grinning broadly. Henrietta's eyes sparkled with mischief. "A daring choice. I like where this is going." Cleo crossed her arms, mock solemn. "Oh, you'll have to find a way to convince the stuffed shirts in the community. I almost pity you." Malik's laughter echoed softly, mingling with the chatter in the background. But then his expression turned serious once more, fixing Cleo with an intense gaze. "You need to know, Cleo, whatever happens next, in this new world we're creating, I'll be right by your side." Cleo felt heat rising to her cheeks, the weight of his words settling deeply in her heart. "Then let's not waste a moment," she urged, feeling the intoxicating thrill of possibility swirling around them, the electric hope of what could be waiting just beyond their grasp. "Together." "Together," he echoed, his voice resonating like an unbreakable promise as they turned to face their future. Scene 101. Testifying for change. The oak doors of the courthouse stood austere, their varnished sheen reflecting fragments of sunlight that broke through the heavy clouds. Cleo Seke took a deep breath, the chill of the surrounding air biting against her skin, a stark reminder of the storm brewing within her. Thoughts twirled in her mind like autumn leaves tossed by a restless wind, her engagement, her future, and the specter of her late fiancé that loomed large, tethering her to a past she longed to escape. Cleo, you ready? Malik Orpheus asked quietly, a warm shield of presence at her side. His voice was a hushed murmur, yet it rocked her, stirring a rush of adrenaline through her veins. He watched her, those dark eyes of his fathoming depths she barely understood herself. Cleo nodded, though uncertainty gripped her insides. Time seemed to hang heavy around them, the bustling atrium fading into an echoing silence. She stepped forward, the polished marble beneath her shoes singing with each step, propelling her toward the judgment of those who had failed to listen in the past. As she climbed the stairs, Malik followed, his tall figure a protective silhouette against the whispers of society, the sharp remarks of his family, and the scornful gazes of the elite. Out here, they were warriors, preparing for a battle few knew existed. The faint scent of aged wood and old documents filled her senses, grounding her. Yet it was the memory of the suffocating brush of her former life that pushed her forward, igniting a fierce desire to break free. Inside the courtroom, a tension thick as fog engulfed her. The polished benches gleamed under the flickering gas lamps, fecund with the weight of unspoken truths. She could hear the low murmurs, the shuffle of papers, the soft rustling of fabric as the gallery filled with those who had come to witness her testimony. Her heart raced. Each pulse resonated with the gravity of the moment. "Remember what we practiced," Malik whispered, his arm brushing against her as they stood before the imposing judge, his presence both an anchor and a flame. Cleo turned to him, the space between them crackling with uncertainty. "What if they don't believe me? What if they see me as just another girl seeking attention?" Malik's gaze softened, a hint of vulnerability flickering in those deep eyes. "You are more than that. They will see your strength." His fingers brushed against her hand, a signal of solidarity. "You've got this." As the gavel struck, silence enfolded the room. "Miss Seke," the judge's voice was like a rolling thunderstorm. "You may begin." Cleo straightened, every muscle taut with anticipation. "Your Honor," she started, her voice unwavering yet reverberating with a tremor of anxious energy. "I stand before you today, not just to testify against a corrupt network that endangers lives, but to reclaim my voice and the voices of those silenced." Subtle gasps echoed around the chamber, and she glanced up briefly to catch Malik's reassuring nod. The moment flashed in her mind, the countless nights spent plotting with him at the dimly lit cafe, poring over documents, souls ablaze with purpose. It was as if those late-night talks had coalesced into this significant act of courage. The prosecutor's voice sliced through her thoughts, drenched in condescension. "What proof do you have that your claims are credible? You are but a woman jilted by circumstance." Cleo clenched her fists, summoning that righteous fire. "But I am not only a woman. I am a person who witnessed firsthand the damage done by carelessness, corruption, the death that ensued." Her breath caught as she caught Malik's gaze, his expression a tapestry of fierce pride and relentless support. The tension in the room morphed into a palpable beast, glares turned icy, whispers became thunderous roars of accusation and disbelief. Each word out of her mouth was a stone thrown into a still pond, every ripple a challenge against the oppressive tide that threatened to swallow her whole. She took a step forward, the floor creaking beneath her resolve. "You must listen. I am testifying not just for myself, but for all those who cannot stand here today, for those lost to this web of deceit." Her voice rose, echoing against the cold stone walls, resonating with empowerment. Amid the gasps and murmurs, the judge's gavel silenced the room once more. "Control your emotions, Miss Seke." But emotions were what had brought her here. "I cannot!" Cleo exclaimed, spontaneous fire in her speech, "not when lives hang in the balance." Malik shifted closer, the heat radiating from him melding with her newfound determination. She stole a glance at him, his fierce presence like a lighthouse amidst a brewing storm. They shared a wrenching moment of understanding, a silent vow hanging in the air. "Witnesses," the prosecutor countered, smirking. "Names? Evidence?" "Listen closely," she replied, her breath deepening. "You have all dismissed the signs of corruption, but I will not. I had to lose everything to realize my power." Malik's gaze tightened, pooling with unspoken emotion. "You're breaking free, Cleo," he murmured, the words brushing against her heart, igniting fierce solidarity. "I am breaking through." And as she spoke those words, conviction coursed through her veins. weaving a tapestry of hope against the backdrop of turmoil that loomed like a shadow in the courtroom. "Your Honor," she continued, lifting her chin defiantly, "this corruption will not win, not today." The air surged with a mix of anticipation and the unmistakable scent of revolution. Cleo was no longer a mere witness, she was a force, and the outcome of this battle would ripple far beyond this room. Scene 102. The crescent moon. The moon hung low, a crescent smile casting silvery pools of light on the cobblestone courtyard behind Cleo's ancestral home. The night air was cool, the scent of blooming jasmine swirling around, heavy and sweet. Malik leaned against the moss-covered stone wall, the shadows playing across his sharp features, embodying the tension between serenity and turmoil. He absently tossed a pebble against the wall, the dull thud echoed through the stillness. Cleo, seated at a wrought iron table, fiddled with a delicate porcelain cup, her fingers tracing the intricate floral patterns. Each movement was deliberate, masking the torrent of emotions swirling within her. "Why do we keep circling this?" she said, her voice tentative yet edged with steel. Malik straightened, his dark eyes narrowing into slits, reflecting the silver hue of the moonlight. "Because you refuse to see what's in front of you, Cleo. You're caught in this engagement like a bird in a cage, singing bright songs while the door is wide open." "A cage?" she replied, seemingly amused. "You think my life is so simple? I'm navigating far more than you know. You, of all people, should understand the shadows lurking in the corners." He took a step toward her, intensity radiating from his presence as he leaned over the table, palm flat against the cool surface. "Shadows? Cleo, your fiancé's indifference is the least of your worries. There's a darkness closing in. You can feel it, can't you?" A tense silence enveloped them, thick as the night fog creeping in from the edges of the property. Cleo pulled back, the warmth from Malik's palm retreating as she folded her arms. I'm not afraid of the darkness, Malik. I'm afraid of what I might find in my own heart." He clenched his jaw, his handsome face a mask of restrained frustration. "You think I don't know about fear? Every day I navigate the aftermath of a family that is anything but safe. That night, Cleo, there are things I can't speak, truths buried beneath heavy stones." "Are you expecting me to trust you after everything?" Cleo shot back, the crack in her voice revealing a vulnerability she struggled to conceal. "Trust isn't given, it's earned," Malik replied, his tone softening, almost coaxing. "And you're not alone in this, no matter how isolated you feel." He paused, the space between them crackling with unspoken tension. "There's something between us." "Stop," she interrupted, her voice sharper. "This isn't a romantic interlude, Malik. We're discussing survival here." "Is it?" he said, stepping closer, the challenge in his voice palpable. "Or is it your fear of commitment blinding you to what we could be?" "Could be?" Cleo shook her head, hair tumbling like a waterfall down her back. "You think this is a game? That romance is the solution to our very real problems?" Malik huffed a laugh, the weight of the situation suddenly seeming lighter, yet the tension had not fully dissipated. "It's not a game, it's a strategy. Love has a way of disarming threats, Cleo. You can't ignore it. You can't keep pushing away what feels right." Irked, she stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the stone with a harsh screech. "And what do you suggest? That I abandon my engagement, throw caution to the wind, and leap into whatever this is?" She paused, breathing heavy as the cool breeze ruffled her skirts. "You know it's not that simple." "Love is simple," Malik replied, now standing straight, his gaze locked on her with an intensity that made her pulse race. "Everything else is the struggle we endure. You've built walls so high, I'm surprised you can even see who's on the other side." Enraged yet compelled, Cleo took a step toward him, the space shrinking with each heartbeat. "And will you stand there, tall and brooding, suggesting I tear them down without giving me a reason to trust you? To trust this?" The air hung between them like a thread pulled tight, hearts pounding in sync, as if the world paused just for them. Malik lowered his voice, raw honesty weaving through his words. "Because beneath those walls, it's just you, just Cleo, and that woman is worth every risk. You're worth every risk." In that moment, something shifted, illuminated under the crescent moon. It wasn't just the peril of their circumstances they faced, but the inexplicable connection buzzing like electricity in their veins. Cleo, momentarily speechless, felt the weight of his gaze suffuse the chill of the night with warmth. "What if the risk is too great?" she finally whispered, vulnerability seeping through her bravado. "Then you'll never know what you're missing," Malik said, his voice steady, drawn closer, the distance between them now a mere breath away. Tension lingered, the night heavier with secrets unspoken as they both recognized the depth of their choice looming before them. A fragile understanding began to blossom. Cleo cleared her throat, determination flashing once more. "Then let's not waste any more time." Malik's lips curled, a hint of mischief sparking in his dark eyes. "Then let's start living for ourselves, not for others." And under the watchful gaze of the crescent moon, everything began to change. Scene 103, Reawakening Dreams. Cleo stood at the grand windows of her family's estate, the early morning light streaming through the sheer curtains like whispered promises. Outside, the dewy garden shimmered with colors bursting into life, yet inside, the air hung heavy with the weight of unspoken dreams. She cradled a paintbrush, its bristles delicately stained with vibrant hues of cerulean and saffron. This was no ordinary task. It was the first step toward reclaiming a part of herself she had long buried beneath layers of obligation. Malik entered the room, his presence cutting through the stillness. He paused, taking in the sight of Cleo lost in her craft. "Are you planning to drown the house in that flamboyant blue?" he teased, a sly smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Cleo glanced up, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly at his familiar banter. "It's called cobalt, and if you don't appreciate art, perhaps you should reconsider your choices in friends," she shot back, a flicker of mischief in her eyes. "Friends? I'm just here for the scandal," Malik replied, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, his tone playful yet layered with something deeper. The light bounced off his skin, illuminating the mix of seriousness and warmth in his expression. "Scandals are for those who can afford to waste time," Cleo murmured, her gaze returning to the canvas. The colors seemed to swirl in her mind, visions of long-lost passion whispering for attention, igniting moments of nostalgia she tried so hard to suppress. Malik stepped closer, his curiosity piqued by her withdrawal. "You used to dream of this, Cleo. Remember how you would always talk about painting the world? What happened to that fire?" The question settled in the air, heavy and contemplative. Cleo hesitated, paintbrush suspended in midair. Dreams feel childish when life demands so much seriousness, or perhaps they seem reckless when the world edges toward chaos. "Yet here you are, with brushes in hand, splattering a bit of chaos of your own," he pointed out, his voice low, like a conspirator sharing secrets. "Let that chaos bloom. It's more than emotion. It's you." With an exhale, she placed the brush down and turned to face him fully. "I won't let those dreams lead to disappointment again. I've had enough of riding the tides of hope only to drown in a sea of reality." His brow knit with understanding. Reality can be a harsh teacher, but it can't dim the spark inside you. Not completely. The intensity of his gaze felt as though he was drawing out the truth from her, beckoning her to confront the storm of hesitation that raged beneath the surface. "You make it sound so easy, Malik," she replied, the bitterness creeping back into her tone. "But every step feels heavy when cast in doubt." A silence stretched between them, thick and electric, filled with the unsaid. It was the kind of silence that seemed to vibrate with emotions, jealousy lurking nearby. Every heartbeat a reminder of the unresolved tensions from their troubled pasts, thickening the air with unspoken yearnings. Malik took a step forward, the light filtering around him like a halo. "What if I told you that doubt can't survive alongside ambition? They are not friends, you know." Cleo regarded him, the truth wrestling at her heart as both tender and painful. "But ambition has left me scarred," she whispered, crossing her arms defensively. "Then paint over the scars, transform them," he said, voice dropping to a softer timbre. "The good, the bad, it is all part of the narrative, just like us." Cleo's breath hitched, the connection between them palpable. She felt like a coiled spring, ready to either unravel or explode with all that they had left unspoken. "And what story are we telling?" she asked, a hint of uncertainty lacing her words. "Whichever one you choose," he replied softly, his eyes searching hers, stirring a heart of passion buried so deeply it seemed almost foreign. Perhaps a story of second chances, of memories forged in the colors of defiance. The world outside faded, trapped in a moment wrapped in possibility. Cleo took a breath, a spark igniting within her. Then let us paint it with hope. With renewed determination, she reached for the brush, her fingers brushing against Malik's as he instinctively acknowledged the invitation. This time, it was not just about the picture she would create, but the story they would share, of ambitions rekindled amidst the chaos of their lives. Together, she asked, heart racing at the prospect of shared dreams and uncharted paths. Always together, Malik affirmed, a promise that threaded through every flick of paint as they returned to their work, united in a fabric of vibrant new beginnings. Scene 104, Into the Night. Cleo swept her gaze over the flickering lanterns strung between the trees, their light casting a warm halo against the encroaching shadows. The evening air, sweet with the scent of jasmine, felt electric with unspoken tension. What do you think they're hiding? Cleo's voice broke the stillness, a hint of frustration weaving through her words like the tendrils of ivy climbing the garden trellis. She turned to Malik, who leaned against the rough bark of an ancient oak, arms crossed over his chest, silently brooding. Malik's jaw clenched visibly, the muscles taut beneath his skin. I don't want to think about it, he said, the weight of his tone heavy. His dark eyes searched hers for an understanding that felt just out of reach, a bridge unbuilt between them. It's not our shambles to sort out, Cleo scoffed, dropping her gaze to the cobblestones beneath her feet. Not our shambles? Malik, this isn't just some high society balderdash. Their secrets affect our lives, lives that are already teetering on the edge of chaos. She leaned forward slightly, her frustration bubbling beneath the surface, begging to be released. As if acknowledging the spark in her fervor, Malik shifted, his body language softening ever so slightly. Maybe it's time to let it go, Cleo, he replied, the gentleness in his voice at odds with the tempest brewing in her heart. We fought hard to break free from it. Cleo's breath caught, her shoulders rolling back defiantly. You may wish to forget, but I can't, she started, but the words tangled in the air as she recalled the echoes of betrayal that clung to her like an unwelcome shadow. Then what do you want? He interjected, his brows knitting together in intensity. What are you really seeking? She hesitated, searching for the right words, but all that came to mind was the flickering anxiety of her uncertainty. The world around them felt too sharp, too real. The urgency to protect her fragile sense of self surged within her again. The silence drawn between them extended, punctuated by the distant laughter of partygoers spilling from the mansions where silver and gold glimmered like deceiving stars. Cleo noticed Malik's gaze again, piercing through the veil of pretense they both clung to. I want, she began, then stopped short. A shuffle of leaves drew both their attentions as a small gathering of friends appeared, drawn to the same intoxicating night. But instead of banter, chaos erupted. Cleo, shouted Nyla, a roguishly charming acquaintance with a twinkle in her eye. Are we going or what? The raucous behind that hedge needs an audience. Her infectious grin lit up the space, but Cleo felt tension remaining in her core. More like a farce, Malik murmured under his breath, rolling his eyes. Certainly not the time for pessimism, Nyla chirped, nudging Malik with her shoulder as she joined them. You know the rules, mischief awaits. Malik's lips twisted, a reluctant smile flaring momentarily, until the tension snapped back with the force of a spring. Our lives are already complicated, Nyla, he replied, the protective edge back in his voice. Not if you let yourself live a little. Nyla's infectious laughter rang through the air, setting off a chain reaction of light-heartedness around them. Cleo, come on! What's the point of being miserable when the night is so ripe with possibility? Maybe you should take your own advice, Malik scoffed, eyeing Nyla playfully. Tche, she said, tapping her temple with mock seriousness. Cleo watched this exchange, the camaraderie swirling like the gentle winds rustling through the leaves. Still, a part of her felt taut, ready to snap at the chasm that had widened just moments before. Perhaps I should join you then, Cleo suggested, though her voice faltered slightly. Definitely. It needn't be just other people's drama dragging you down, Nyla insisted, her eyes glinting with encouragement. Let's make this rueful affair an adventure, if only to dodge the dreary madness. As if struck by the unrelenting desire to escape from the night's heavy truths, Cleo squared her shoulders and gave a smile, a brilliant facade that masked her inner turmoil. Malik's eyes searched hers, a flicker of concern mirrored in his own expressions. "Just know you have me at your back," Malik muttered quietly, his tone promising unwavering support, drawing closer as he leaned in slightly. Cleo felt her heart lurch, that uncharted territory of affection bubbling just beneath the surface. She reached out, gently touching his arm, an unspoken acknowledgement of the path ahead. "Let's then," she decided, the moment charged with unforeseen energy as she turned to the path leading back into the lively throng. "There's always something waiting in the shadows, isn't there?" Malik stated, amusement layered with something deeper, darker, clinging to their every word. "And yet," Cleo replied, "we will find a way through." Together they stepped into the exuberant night, the air filled with laughter, but the silence between them spoke volumes yet to be unraveled. It was an uncharted abyss, but perhaps, just perhaps, they would find solace within the chaos. Scene 105, Honor Among Thieves. The dimly lit tavern buzzed with muted conversation, the air thick with scent of spilled ale and slow-cooked stews. Flickering candles cast trembling shadows on the rough-hewn walls, creating pockets of intimacy amid the chaotic energy. Cleo Seke sat at a table shadowed in the corner, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns of her lace sleeve as she anxiously awaited the arrival of Malik Orpheus. She could almost feel the weight of the world pressing down against her finely tailored gown, leaving her breathless with the anticipation of the confrontation ahead.